Hi, I'm Melissa. Welcome to Concordia Church Online.
Hi, I'm Richard, Concordia's pastor. Thanks for watching today. This week I've been kind of thinking about my role here at Concordia, and one of the things that I do as watching out for the whole overall place is I'm kind of like the parking lot police. Now, what I mean by that is we got preschoolers here, so when I look out and I see a car that's kind of suspicious because it's been lingering around for a while, more than it should, I go and check it out. And sometimes it's nothing, but more than times than I can count, it's kind of some behavior going on that shouldn't really be going on here. And most of the time, I just politely ask people to move on, and they move on. But sometimes I get lip. Sometimes I get a lot of lip. And when I get lip, one of the refrains seems to be, well, you can't tell me what to do. I live here. And I'm trying to be polite, so I usually just don't even respond to that, don't say anything. But in my mind, I'm thinking, really? You live here? Here? In the church school parking lot, and do you not know that this is like private property? But then again, maybe in their minds, they don't think there is such a thing as private property. See, we live in a culture where I'm my own boss, and I make my own rules, and I determine what's right for me. And so there is no really out of bounds. If I say or feel this is my domain, then this is my domain. So I guess saying I live here makes it in their minds that I got the right to do whatever I want because this is my domain, because I'm the boss of me. Now, let's be honest for a minute. When I'm my own boss is quite appealing on the surface of things. Where has being the sole boss of me ended up? I wonder if some of the rudeness that we see in society today stems in part from this I'm my own boss and nobody can tell me what to do philosophy. And I know as I look at my own life, I think, well, when I'm the boss of me is my dominant mindset, well, it usually means I'm not all that willing then to listen to others. I'm not all that willing to learn from others, and I don't really work all that well with others, and more often than not, that kind of ends poorly. So, which should lead us, I think, to examine other alternatives, except usually doesn't. Why in the world would I want to submit to the authority or leadership of someone else? Because it might end better? Well, before we explore the alternative, I want you to pause and think about this for a moment. Think about a time when insisting on being your own boss didn't turn out so well for you. All right? What didn't turn out so well? And what did you learn from that? So let me suggest an alternative to that crash and burn scenario that you were just talking about, or the one more relationship got ruined scenario, or the since I'm my own boss, I got to solve this all myself scenario. It's an alternative that can actually give you confidence no matter how mixed up or messed up your life is. And before you tune me out and say, well, that's not for me, because even though I know it's not perfect, I really like being my own boss. Let me have you consider that the alternative here is proposed by someone who was a boss, a big boss, a king. In the days when the king's word was law and kings could pretty much do whatever they wanted. The king's name was David, and he was in charge of the country of Israel. Now, David wasn't always the king, and he wasn't born into royalty. David started out at the bottom as a poor shepherd boy and the youngest in his family, which meant there wasn't a whole lot of boss prospects in his future. He lived in a time when being the youngest meant you were at the end of the line, and when commoners didn't normally get to move up into royalty. But long story short, God had other plans for David, and David became the king. Now, you'd think that such a scenario would have made David pretty intent on that I'm the boss of me scenario. And there were times where that sort of thinking ran really strongly through his veins. But funny thing, the times that was running so strongly through him, those were the times that really got David into trouble. Sometimes some really big trouble. Now, we don't know when David wrote Psalm 23 in his life. Certainly, my guess is he's drawing on his experience from his time as a shepherd. But as I'm looking at this, I'm thinking that my guess is that David's probably writing this later in his life. As he's kind of reflecting back a little bit and thinking about some of the crash and burns in his life and some of the crash and burns from the result of being his own boss. And he's proposing in this psalm, I think, what he thinks is a better alternative for us. Now here's how David starts out. Psalm 23, verse 1. The Lord is my shepherd. Now, little disclaimer here. When I hear the word shepherd, we're going to be talking about shepherds and sheep, and I'm a city boy, so what you're going to get from me here is reading, not personal experience. But what I learned about, here's what I learned about shepherds and sheep from back in the day. First thing is that back in the day, the shepherd was the absolute boss of the flock, absolute boss of the sheep. Where they lived, shepherd's choice. Where they grazed, shepherd's choice. Where they found the water, shepherd's choice. Where they rested, shepherd's choice. When they were sheared, shepherd's choice. When they were killed, either for food or for sacrifice, shepherd's choice. I mean, the shepherd was the absolute boss of the flock. But being the boss of the flock was also a lot of work for the shepherd because, well, sheep have a tendency to think that they're their own boss. And as a result, they have a tendency to go their own way and do their own thing, even if it's harmful for them. Now, I'm going to give you some examples of that as in the weeks ahead we get a little deeper into Psalm 23. For right now, I just want to tell you from all my reading, I think you can summarize what sheep are like in these words. Silly, smelly, and stupid. How'd you like that on your resume? Silly, smelly, and stupid. And also helpless, unless they have a shepherd to care for them. Now see, David's writing in Israel, where it didn't rain for more than half the year, and so good pasture was hard to find, and sheep had a hard time finding it themselves, and thieves and robbers and wild animals were a constant danger, and sheep don't have a lot of defense mechanisms. They don't have like sharp teeth or fierce claws or any ability to fight back even as a group, and they're not very fast or swift. They don't have a burst of speed to run away. They don't even have a smell like a skunk that pushes people away. They just kind of smell, but it's not strong enough to ward off any of those predators. They're helpless and silly and smelly and stupid. Now, by starting out, the Lord is my shepherd, I want you to understand what David's saying here. David's the king, and he's admitting, that's me. I'm a sheep, not the big boss. Silly, smelly, and stupid. In fact, David's saying, as I look back at my life, being the boss of me didn't work, at least much of the time. I made too many mistakes. And my pride was a problem. And too many times, my way was the wrong way. And sometimes I crashed and burned, and sometimes that was really painful. So David the king here is acknowledging, I'm not the boss. God is my boss. The Lord is my king. The Lord is my Lord. And I don't run my own life. I'm under God's authority and leadership. Now, that's a hard thing to say. Because if I say it, I'm admitting a few things about myself that, while true, I would just rather not admit are true. I'm admitting when I say the Lord's my shepherd that, number one, I need a shepherd. And I can't do it all myself. Second thing I'm admitting is I'm a sheep. And sheep are silly, smelly, and stupid much of the time. Now, how does that apply to me? How does that apply to you? I want you to pause and take a moment and reflect just on this past week or so. Think about some of the things you did, the things you said, some of your attitudes. Where did they go wrong? And what's the evidence in that you were more sheep-like than shepherd-like? Now I know that's going to be a little uncomfortable, all right? But go ahead and do it. It's hard to fix a problem if you don't admit it's there, and it's hard to ask for help if you don't realize where you're messing up. So hit pause. I did that, and do the work right here, and think and talk about that right now, and then hit play, and we'll come back and talk to God about that together. God, I know I messed up. I thought my way was best. I guess I usually do. But now I see that being my own boss just led to mistakes and mess-ups. Forgive me, Lord, and help me. Help me get on the right path in those places that I was just thinking about right now. Amen. So if you did the work right there and didn't just speed through that pause, that was a good moment and an important one. Maybe a little painful. Again, it was for me as I reflected on some of the things that I was thinking and saying and doing the past week, but necessary. But see, that I'm the boss of me nature, it's still constantly pushing back. Right? It's in our DNA. It's in the current of our culture. And that makes it pretty hard to resist, even when it's causing issues in our lives and there is a better alternative out there. So what is it that helps us choose a different direction? Beyond recognizing that I'm a sheep, and that as a sheep I need help, that I need a shepherd, what else might help me, like King David, to consider placing myself under somebody else's authority and leadership and control? Well, in a word, character. Character. What I mean by that is the character of the one that I am going to submit to. Now, let's follow David's analogy through here as we think about this shepherd and sheep relationship. And what the sheep experienced the shepherd doing for them, and what it said about the character of the shepherd. Now in David's time, the shepherd pretty much lived with his flock all the time. And he was everything that the flock needed. He was the guide, the protector, the defender, the provider, the doctor. The shepherd led the sheep to good pasture when good pasture was sometimes really hard to find. The shepherd found the sheep enough water, especially when living in a land where water was sometimes really hard to find and not a lot of it was available. The shepherd defended them against both wild animals and robbers, which were quite abundant. The shepherd went after them if they got lost or separated from the rest of the flock, because if he didn't, that was pretty much a death sentence for the sheep. And the shepherd, if they were sick or injured, the shepherd nursed them back to health. And what the sheep experienced is that the shepherd here, he was doing pretty much everything for the sheep. And the sheep totally depended on him. And their experience was that the shepherd pretty much came through all the time. Right? He provided what was needed, period. And even though he had to work hard, and sometimes even though he had to risk things to his own personal safety, he did it. And when he did his job well, when he provided, the flock flourished. And here's something else I read about the relationship between the shepherd and the sheep back in the day, kind of like in David's time. Apparently, the shepherd knew every one of his sheep individually. It's like he even had names for each of the sheep, which is amazing to me if you think about the fact that, to me, I look at a flock and every sheep looks pretty much and smells pretty much like the next one. But the shepherd lived among them and could see and knew each of their individual characteristics, even that big flock. And he'd give them a name and he'd call them by name and they'd respond to his voice and come. That's the relationship. So what's David trying to get us to see in this first sentence of the psalm where he says, "The Lord is my shepherd"? What's he trying to get us to understand about our relationship with God? Well, I think what he's saying when he says, "The Lord is my shepherd," is that God offers us first a personal and a loving relationship. One where we're not just a number, that we're actually a name. Second, I think he's pointing out the faithfulness and the dependability of God. That like that shepherd, God shows up day in and day out and does exactly what he says he's going to do. Third thing I see here is David pointing out there's this demonstration after demonstration after demonstration that God has our best interests at heart, even if he has to work to get us to see that. And then the fourth thing I see is that he's got demonstration after demonstration after demonstration of this with loving and sacrificial care that God provides. God provides. He provides everything that we need. Now, as you hear that, I want you to think about, does that sort of character of God, does it make you at least consider giving up leadership of your life over to him? I mean, now I know we don't like giving up being the boss. It goes against our nature, it goes against our culture, but when you look at God's character, can you trust him to take care of you? Can you trust him to always love you? Can you trust him to be there for you? Can you trust him to provide for you? And when you look at the results of that, and you look at the results of letting God be your leader as compared to what being your own boss has done, is it at least something you can think about giving your life to? Here's one thing that you can do to encourage you to take a step in that direction. I want you to pause again and think about this. Think about this last year and where have you seen God provide for you? How have you seen God provide for you in this past year? And how does that give you confidence in the year coming forward? So let's talk about confidence for a minute. Because people are still in flux these days. For a lot of people, their days are still up and down, and for some, more down than up. I mean, there's been some massive fallout from COVID. And even though we seem to be sort of coming out of that, there's still a lot of instability and uncertainty going forward. There's still a lot of big issues that haven't been solved or resolved. And there's still a lot of emotional and psychological and relational and even spiritual baggage that we're carrying around. That means that we're still in need. And we still need those things to be addressed. And I want you to consider David's mindset. If he's writing this in the time later in his life when he's kind of has the experience of his whole life to look back on, I think he's, again, asking us to consider whether placing ourselves under God's leadership rather than my own ends up in a better place and with better results. Now, for David, the result of doing that, of placing himself under God's leadership, it was, first of all, this sense of trust and contentment. Picking that up, and just in that first line where he says, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." Trust and contentment. I shall not want. Or maybe it's a better translation to say, I shall not be in want, even though I still want lots of things that I don't have. I will have the things that I need. It's not because I don't want things, and it's not because I don't have need. Again, if David's looking back on his life, he can certainly see times when he was in great need. Times of great personal poverty. Times of acute hardship. Times when people were trying to kill him and he was running for his life and hiding out. The time when his own son stole his kingdom from him. So many times, many times of what I would describe as a deep anguish of the spirit, kind of a dark night of the soul time, that he's like, I want this to end, I want it to be gone, I want it to be gone now, I need it to be gone right away, and it was just hanging around. So David had a lot of need. Not just physical need either. So I think what he's saying here is he's not just saying, I have everything that I physically need. I've got food, I've got air, I'm still alive. I think what he's really saying in its essence is this, that even with all those needs, and even with all that lack, I'm still not going to lack the expert care and management of my shepherd. I have what I need because the shepherd is leading and guiding my life. I may not see how everything's working out. I mean, sheep in stuck places rarely do. But he's saying, I'm still satisfied with God's management of my life. And because he's my shepherd, I know that if I am in one of those stuck spots, he's going to come running after me. He's going to do whatever he can to come and help me out. Why? Because he's the shepherd who delights in his flock. He's the shepherd who delights in his sheep. He's the shepherd who's aware of all the dangers that his sheep face. He's the shepherd who's constantly watching over his sheep all throughout the day, looking to see that they're all there, looking to see that they're safe, looking to see if anyone's run away and missing. He's the shepherd who wants what's best for his flock. He's the shepherd that there's no trouble that's too great to go through to come and take care of and rescue his sheep. I mean, Jesus gave us much deeper insight on that when hundreds of years after this, he said this, John chapter 10, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd gives his life for the sheep. See that, and you're willing to trust, and there's a contentment in the shepherd's care, even if you don't figure out or seem to think that you have everything that you need. And that leads to something else too, and that's a confidence that I think I really need in uncertain and unstable times. A confidence that even if I happen to be in one of those spots that life doesn't seem all good, and I still have all sorts of needs, and there doesn't seem to be a way through the mess that I'm in, even there I have the confidence that the Lord is my shepherd. And because he's my shepherd, he will provide. Now, if I'm my own boss and I'm in that sort of a spot, I'm in trouble. I sure don't have a lot of much confidence about anything. But if the Lord's my shepherd, and Jesus is the leader of my life, no matter what sort of spot I'm in, I can have the confidence that Jesus loves me and takes delight in me just because I'm his. And Jesus forgives my mistakes just because I'm his. And Jesus provides for my needs because I'm his. Which means that even in that uncertain and unstable and stuck spot, I can trust Him. And I can lean into Him. God provides. And so I can have trust and contentment and confidence, even in times like these. Again, mistakes forgiven, needs provided for. Never a moment that I'm not loved, even when I'm wandering away. If that's a result of placing my life under God's leadership, then maybe having a boss isn't such a bad thing after all. Take a moment to reflect on that as we close out this conversation.